Okay, so this is Last Encounter, a roguelite twin-stick shooter in space, naturally, and it kind of prides itself on its weapon system and the customization that it offers. And you can see that you start out here with some pilot and ship collection. I'm actually using an unlockable pilot and an unlockable ship in this video, because why not? I spent the effort to unlock them, might as well try them out. And what you're about to see is the sort of unlock hub that a lot of roguelites use. And you actually keep about half of the currency that you obtain in your previous run that you can use to unlock, well, research and then unlock by researching various times some weapons and components, and there's a lot of them, as you can see. You have 3 different slots, which we'll talk about later, that you can use to use and customize your various weapons, and it's actually a very fun system. You've probably seen weapon systems like this in various games before, and I always am a sucker for systems like these that allow you to sort of modularly create your own sort of custom weapon. And this one works very well. It makes you feel quite powerful when you really get it running. And every ship starts with its one of 5 weapons, basically: bullet, shell, beam, charger, and rocket. And then the other 2 slots are used for modifier weapon parts. And as you can see there, you can use your currency to research the other weapons, or weapon components. And they go in those slots, and you have to research them multiple times in order to actually unlock them, but you actually can find them in the runs without unlocking them. What researching does is allow you to actually buy them to start with them, to start a run actually with them active, and also normally when you find them in a run, they have ammunition, and once you run out of the ammunition, then, you know, they're gone, sort of like durability. But if they're researched fully, when you find them in a run or buy them to start a run with, they actually have infinite ammo, effectively, and you can use them permanently, which is incredibly useful and very, very powerful indeed. So that research system is incredibly integral to being able to actually survive longer runs. So it's not just for, you know, unlocking things to find, it's actually for basically living. So this is the game itself, and it's really quite a looker, actually. It starts off with a very strong kind of opening visual theme, very purple, very bright. This whole game is actually very, very colorful. That is one definite positive that I would give it right off the bat, is its art style and its theming is all really, really nice. The ship designs I really like, especially in the later levels. The ships all look extremely cool, and actually makes me kind of wish that I could pilot a lot of them and try them out. They look super cool. Actually kind of reminds me of some like old school Captain Forever ships, and a little bit of Transcendence here and there in the art style as well. I love Transcendence. I need to actually play that some more. I haven't played it in years. And yeah, the later levels all look just as good, if not better, than this one. They have a lot of really cool stuff in the foreground, and a lot of really, really nice stuff in the background that has them looking very, very nice, and a lot of depth going on, but not too busy to where you actually get confused as to what is in the background and what's in the foreground and run into stuff and die, which is a nice actual medium to have. You know, some twin sticks and other games with a sort of 2.5D looking art style get a little bogged down in between the foreground and background and actually get a little bit too busy. This game avoids that, I suppose, by having the depth of space to work with, so that there is a good separation between the foreground and the background, and you don't actually get confused, which is very important in some of the later levels where it actually does get very visually busy on purpose, but not so busy that you can't tell what in the world is going on. And that does get important because this game is hard. There's lots of dodging, lots of bullets, and lots of enemies, especially in, like, say, the next level after this, which is called Materion, which is a sort of space jungle, and there's a lot of swarming enemies. That level focuses on small enemies in large numbers, and there's just a lot coming at you in waves, and it's very hectic and quite difficult. The game doesn't really pull any punches. The first area here, the Dark Galaxies, starts out fairly simple. It's quite easy. There's not a lot to threaten you. You know, all of these ships are, their patterns are simple. They're easy to deal with. You can kite them around without too much effort. But after this level, the difficulty ramps up very, very quickly. And Beyond that, I haven't actually beaten this game yet. I've made it all the way to, let's see, what was the place called? Energion, which was beautiful. It was a kind of ancient destroyed structure formed of this sort of white stone and these blue energy crystals. And all of the ship designs were extremely cool, and that probably the coolest I've seen in the game so far. But it was brutally difficult, and I couldn't actually make it through. It was very close. I was like one of these jump points away from actually making it through, and then I got horribly slaughtered by something that I didn't see coming at all. These sort of like kamikaze ships that run into you at very high speeds, and died. So yeah, there's that. But the way the game mostly works is it is, of course, well, I'm not going to say procedurally generated, because each of these areas is actually pre-constructed. You will see them multiple times on multiple playthroughs, sort of like other games like, say, Enter the Gungeon, where it is in that style of procedural generation that is pre-constructed chunks that are put together in different orders each time. The actual levels themselves are not randomly generated. It is the order in which the handmade levels are actually pieced together that is procedural, not the levels themselves. So the levels are put together in these sort of disparate jump points that you will go through, and each point can be of a couple of different sizes. Some are larger than others. Of course, the larger ones are usually a bit more difficult because there's more to go through. They tend to have more enemies and stuff like that. And these smaller areas are a bit more concentrated, with maybe a little more aggression up front, but overall less to threaten you as a whole. And each area will have their own little bits of objectives that you can go through. And as you clear each one out, as you can see there, you go back to the galactic map and jump to the next one and see what's there. Your overall goal is to not die, first of all, and secondly, get 3 portal keys. 3 of those areas will have 1 portal key each. You never know which ones will have it. You just gotta jump around and try and find them. And then find the portal to the next galaxy, and then repeat the process and try and get to the end, alive. And of course, the whole way through, you're also trying to find upgrades for yourself in the form of weapons, like that right there, which of course I got a little bit unlucky on my first pull. Finding a weapon happened to be the same weapon I actually started with, so that's a bit, unfortunate. But on this particular tile set, there's always a weapon of some kind right there, but in this case it happened to be the one I already had. What are the chances of that? And also passive upgrades. You can find those purple things that I've been picking up, which are small sort of statistical upgrades like fire rate, damage taken, shield capacity, shield recharge speed, maximum health, all sorts of like sort of small statistical enhancements. Very, very useful in the sort of grand scheme of things, but they take a couple of pickups to sort of show their full enhancement capability, you could say. But you will find them over time, so they're very nice to pick up every time you see them. And what you don't see in this particular run, because they're fairly rare, I just happen to not find one, are passive items. In very rogue-lite style, you can find, just passive items lying around the place, like, say, a bandana called Rambo that increases your fire rate by a fairly significant amount. I found a phoenix, which is incredibly strong in that it actually revives you at full health one time when you die, and then goes away. I found some that actually have some negative capabilities along with very strong positive capabilities, like a massive increase in damage but slower bullets. Not a slower fire rate, but like literally slower projectiles. Some of the stuff like that. They're usually really, really good when you find them, but some of them do have some negative capabilities along with them. And you can also just forego, and this is very similar to a lot of other roguelites in the way that you don't necessarily have to clear the entire floor once you find the exit. Once you've found the portal and all of the portal keys, if there are still unexplored regions left, you can just forego exploring them and leave. Just get out of there if you want to. But, of course, that's sort of the safe but unsure way, if you get what I mean. There could be shops, there could be powerful relics or weapons or things that you're leaving behind, but you also could die if you go and try and find them. So you never know. It's sort of the I don't want to take any extra damage looking for whatever is there. There might be nothing, but there also could be really strong stuff. It's that sort of dynamic that if you've played any games like these, you're very familiar with. I have found, at least on the first galaxy, and I'm pretty sure there are on others too, I've just never seen them, they seem to be fairly rare, that sometimes there are portals to later galaxies as well that allow you to skip one. For instance, I've found a portal to both the second and the third galaxy on the first galaxy. So sometimes you can just skip the second one altogether if you feel that you're well armed enough and in a good enough condition. You can just skip the second one and go straight to the third one and probably die immediately because it's really freaking hard. And yeah, I've done that several times actually, just because if it's there, you might as well. You can basically choose to use your 3 portal keys on whichever you feel that you're ready for. This is a shop. You occasionally do find some shops, and this is one of the upgrades that I was talking about. The submachine upgrade, of course, is basically like a submachine gun. It just sprays bullets everywhere, so it changes whatever your main weapon is. In this case, the bullet weapon is just like a simple shot. And now it has significantly lower accuracy, but a much higher fire rate. So I find it pretty useful for the bullet weapon. For the beam weapon, it is absolutely horrible. So do not get it with that. It makes it total garbage. But for the bullet weapon, it's really good. If I can't find anything else, and I couldn't at the time, so here we go. Now, I do have everything I need to move on, so I will probably be doing that soon. Just gotta get back to the portal up there and leave. And you're about to see what the sort of next areas become very quickly, how the difficulty ramps up quite quickly, but of course it is also very pretty and themed in a sort of, you know, space jungle style. One thing I will say about the game is that the difficulty, the balance in general, is kind of all over the place. I don't know exactly, I can't pinpoint all the reasons why, but I think a lot of it is because the systems in the game are very reliant on its weapon mechanics, and I don't think they're presented in a 100% as intended way. For instance, this area, Materion here, occasionally is fairly straightforward, just a, you know, somewhat more difficult second level, like you would expect. Sometimes, however, it is just nightmarishly difficult with huge swarms of enemies that have very large amounts of health and do very large amounts of damage, which you wouldn't expect, because in like a swarm-based level, shouldn't they technically be doing very low damage and have very low health? That's usually what like swarm enemies do. Well, what it really comes down to is, I think the weapon system in this game maybe needs a little bit of clarity and maybe a little bit of tweaking. It's really, really cool. I like the weapon system a lot. Like I said, I'm kind of a sucker for those sorts of synergistic weapon systems that let you tweak your weapon and kind of combine various components to form something new. I really like that sort of thing, and this game pulls it off really well. You feel really, really powerful when you're able to make it work. But there are a couple of things that I think kind of make it, that hold it back a little bit from its sort of full glory. Because as you'll see a little bit later in the video, when it actually works really well, it's a lot of fun. But it seems to not actually work as well as intended sometimes, which is unfortunate. So, one thing, you see there are 3 slots for your weapons. The first slot is always taken up by your main weapon, which makes sense. But if you see right there, that weapon took up the second slot, or that component. Symmetry makes you shoot forward and backwards. So you can already see that if you pick up the third slot isn't for just having 2 things at once. The slots are actually determined for very specific things. There are second slot power-ups and third slot power-ups. However, there's no way to tell which power-ups actually go in which slot besides experimentation. They're not marked in any way. And although some of them you can kind of make sense of, for instance, things that tend to alter the shot pattern of a weapon, like say the shotgun, like the spread shot, or the triple shot, tend to go in the second slot, and things that add like an elemental style effect like poison or freeze tend to go in the third slot. That's not always the case. For instance, say sine, a sine wave, it turns your shot into a sine wave. You know, that's something that alters the shot pattern of your weapon. That actually goes in the third slot, not the second. So it actually gets really complicated trying to understand which power-ups go in which slot. And the reason this is important is because the whole point of the weapon system is to, like in a lot of roguelites, make yourself as powerful as possible, as you're about to see. You want to make yourself broke overpowered and coast through areas with a really interestingly made build that you have constructed from various parts. And kind of, find your own build. That's the whole point. Just like in Isaac and Gungeon and all those other games like this that I love very much, the whole idea is to create a specific build with interesting weapons and power-ups and see what you can make. And this weapon system in particular is, like, rife for that sort of thing. Because the whole point is experimentation through combining various weapons and power-ups together to create something really interesting. But the problem is, since there's no way to tell which power-ups actually work together and which ones replace each other, you can't actually tell what synergizes with what until you've memorized which pickups actually replace each other and which ones work together with each other. So I think there needs to be some kind of marker or some sort of way to actually tell which power-ups go in which slot before you buy them and spend the money on them, or pick them up in general. Because it is sort of frustrating sometimes to pick a power-up that you think would be like, oh, that would work really good with these homing rockets I have, like a triple homing rocket. That could work, or it may just replace what you already have, and then you'd have to choose and keep switching between them instead of them working together and making it even more powerful like you thought it would. For instance, I think it would be really cool if instead of, if you see all 3 slots are hexagonally shaped, maybe only the first slot should be a hexagon, and the next one should be like a pentagon or a triangle, and the third slot could be like an octagon. And then those shapes could be applied to the power-ups in World and in shops, so that upon seeing them, before buying them or picking them up, you immediately knew which slot they went into. And then you could make like a more informed decision before even seeing them and picking them up where they would go, and then you would know if they would replace what you currently had and you had to keep switching between them, or they would synergize with what you currently had and make your build even stronger. Or you could add like little pips, like a 1, 2, and 3 on top of them, and then also on top of the slots to know which slot they would go into. Basically, I think there would be some sort of indicator. There should be like an indicator on top of the, or around the weapons in some way, so that you knew which slot they would go into before you pick them up or buy them, in order to actually indicate, where they go. I just think that would help. I'm going to go ahead and skip clearing out the second level to show you the third level, which is called Gravitron, which is where things get really difficult, and where I also miserably failed this run, because I screwed up. This place is where things get hard because the enemies start to have a lot more health. They also get shields and the ability to constantly manipulate where you travel via gravity fields and gravity wells, and I just hit that mine. These little tick-looking things can make these crazy gravity fields. Those guys are the bane of my existence. They're basically void rays from StarCraft. They have a very powerful focused laser that they can shoot across the entire screen, basically, and they can also shoot through those translucent-looking like glass asteroids, which are very pretty, and you cannot shoot through them unless you have the beam weapon. So, yeah, this whole place is very difficult in comparison to the last area, and I think this is where things really start to step up in the challenge. But it is very, very pretty, and the music here is also very good. But, yeah, really, I think that is my main problem with the game. If I was to actually put forth some sort of criticism, I really like the game. I have actually enjoyed it quite a bit so far. I think it's a really good try at the roguelite genre in a twin-stick shooter form, which I haven't really seen much of. But I think that sort of balance issue hinges on the weapon system and how interesting it is, not being applied as well as it could be in certain aspects, just because you don't get a lot of weapon components or passive items or things. There's just not a lot of drops for those throughout the game, and that kind of compounds with the fact that you don't always get to apply them as well as you should when you do get them finally, because they don't always synergize as well as they could with each other due to that issue. Other than that, I really do enjoy the game a lot. The art style is fantastic. The music is quite good too. It's very relaxing, kind of chill. Even like the battle music has this sort of chill aspect to it, which is sort of interesting to me. And like I said, the actual ship designs and things are very, very cool looking. It is available right now on Steam for $15, or your regional equivalent, most likely. If you want to give it a try, it is one of those games that gets more and more rewarding the more you play it, because you'll be finding more and more of those components to unlock and spend your hard-earned gold on from your next run, and hopefully get better and better at it, because you'll be able to have more of those to start with and have infinite ammo for, and experience better builds for. So you'll basically be working against that problem I was talking about by having the ability to actually buy a better build from the start once you've learned, instead of relying on the random drops to hopefully give you a build. So that problem I was speaking of actually does kind of solve itself, but it takes a while. And then you'll see more of the game, unlock more ships, unlock more pilots. It is a game that might take a little bit to grow on you, but I think it is worth it to actually give it a shot. And as you see deeper and deeper into the game, you see even better art, and the music I think gets better too. So yeah, I think you should probably give it a shot if you like this sort of thing, if roguelites are your style, and I think if you've watched this channel for any amount of time, you know they most definitely are mine. And there are boss fights, I should point out as well. The boss fights vary from not at all challenging whatsoever to really crushingly difficult with tons of enemies everywhere and multiple phases and a lot of fun. So again, balance is a bit strange in this game, but I think that is something that they're very well aware of and working on, because they have already patched it multiple times with people's feedback in mind, and saying they are aware that the balance is something that they probably should work on continuously, and there already have been like 3 patches in regards to changing balance in multiple ways, so they know. So yeah, it is hectic, it is fun, the weapon system is absolutely awesome, some of the combinations you can come up with are great. I am a fan of the reflective Gatling laser, that's a lot of fun, as well as, what was it, the triple, no, it was the, it was the triple rockets. The triple rocket power-up that I got that one time was really fun. Basically, the weapon system is absolutely the highlight of the game, as well as the ship designs, and some of the backgrounds are very pretty. So, definitely, twin-stick shooter, roguelite. I think it shows that it can be done quite well, and the competence on display with the overall sort of weapon variety and art style and everything shows that this could continually develop into something very, very enjoyable indeed, if this is your sort of thing. Thank you very, very much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this, and if you did or want to see more, please do let me know. And I'll see you guys next time.